Silence is one of the rarest forms of power in this world. Most people think power is loud. They think strength must always be seen, heard, and proven. They believe the strongest person in the room is the one who speaks the most, explains the most, and demands the most attention. But real life teaches a different lesson. The people who are truly powerful often move in silence. They do not waste energy trying to convince everyone of their worth. They do not explain every decision. They do not react to every insult. They do not speak just to fill empty space. Silence gives a person control. It gives them discipline. It gives them mystery. And in many situations, silence gives them more power than words ever could. When you learn how to stay silent, you begin to protect your energy from people who do not deserve access to it. You stop revealing your plans too early. You stop reacting emotionally to things that were designed to disturb you. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who already made up their minds about you. And once you stop doing that, something changes. You become calmer, sharper, harder to read, harder to manipulate, harder to break. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is self-control. Silence is patience. Silence is confidence without performance. A weak person often talks too much because they are desperate to be understood, respected, or noticed. A strong person understands that not every battle deserves a response. Not every opinion deserves attention. Not every attack deserves emotion. Sometimes the most powerful answer is none at all. Sometimes the strongest move is to stay quiet, improve in private, and let your results speak so loudly that your silence becomes unforgettable. Silence also changes the way people see you. The moment you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you become different in their eyes. You become harder to predict, harder to control, harder to provoke. Most people are used to getting quick reactions. They say something, and they expect you to defend yourself. They provoke you, and they expect anger. They criticize you, and they expect you to beg for understanding. But when you stay silent, you break that pattern. You refuse to play the role they prepared for you, and that alone creates power. Silence does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you have no answer. In many cases, it means your answer is too strong to waste on the wrong moment. A man who reacts to everything becomes easy to study, easy to manipulate, easy to trap. But a man who knows how to remain silent keeps his center. He decides when to speak. He decides what deserves his energy. He decides which battles are real and which are distractions disguised as importance. That is why silence often feels intimidating to others. It forces them to sit with their own noise. It forces them to wonder what you are thinking. It forces them to realize that they do not control the emotional temperature of the room anymore. Silence is especially powerful in conflict. Most people lose power the moment they become emotional in front of someone trying to provoke them. The instant you rush to prove your point, defend your ego, or attack back from anger, you give away information. You reveal what touched you. You reveal where you are insecure. You reveal how easily your peace can be interrupted. But when you remain silent, you protect your position. You buy time. You see more. You feel more clearly what is actually happening. You allow the other person to expose themselves fully while you stay grounded. This is one of the greatest advantages silence gives you. It turns observation into a weapon. When you are not busy talking, you notice tone. You notice motives. You notice patterns. You notice what people repeat, what they avoid, and what they accidentally reveal when they think you are too distracted to see it. There is a reason wise people often speak slowly and less. It is not because they have nothing to say. It is because they understand that speaking without understanding is weakness, while quiet attention is strength. Silence also builds emotional discipline. Every time you resist the urge to react immediately, you train yourself. You become less ruled by impulse. You become less dependent on emotional release. You stop treating every feeling like an order that must be obeyed. This is where real self-control begins. Not in pretending you feel nothing, but in feeling deeply without becoming a servant to every emotion that rises inside you. Anyone can speak from anger. Anyone can shout when hurt. Anyone can explain themselves when misunderstood. But it takes strength to stay composed when your ego is uncomfortable. It takes strength to let the moment pass through you without turning it into chaos. And the more you practice this, the more powerful you become. Because a disciplined mind is a dangerous thing. A disciplined mind cannot be pushed easily. It cannot be baited by small people with loud opinions. It cannot be dragged into every argument, every insult, every emotional trap placed in its path. Silence teaches you that not everything deserves your response. Some people speak only to test whether they still have access to your mind. Some situations are designed only to steal your peace. Some arguments have no truth inside them. Only ego competing with ego until both people leave more exhausted than enlightened. In those moments, silence is not avoidance. It is intelligence. It is the refusal to spend your energy where there is no return. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing they must explain themselves in order to be respected. But the truth is, the more you explain yourself to the wrong people, the less respect they often have for you. Not because explanation is always bad, but because constant explanation reveals insecurity. It suggests that your peace depends on being understood by everyone watching. Truly powerful people understand something different. They know that being misunderstood by the wrong crowd is not a tragedy. It is often the price of staying true to yourself. You do not need everyone to understand your silence. You do not need everyone to agree with your distance. You do not need everyone to approve your boundaries. Sometimes silence is the boundary. Sometimes silence is the message. And sometimes silence says more than any speech ever could. When you walk away from drama without explaining, people notice. When you stop arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you, people notice. When you stay calm while others become louder and more desperate, people notice. Your silence begins to carry weight because it is no longer empty. It becomes filled with self-respect. It becomes filled with certainty. It becomes filled with the kind of confidence that does not need applause. There is also a deeper reason silence makes you powerful. It reconnects you with yourself. Most people are drowning in noise. Noise from social media. Noise from other people's opinions. Noise from expectations, trends, reactions, and endless stimulation. In that kind of world, silence becomes rare. And because it is rare, it becomes valuable. In silence, you hear your own mind again. You begin to notice what you actually believe when no one else is speaking. You begin to see where your life is out of alignment. You begin to recognize which desires are truly yours and which ones were planted there by pressure, comparison, and fear. That is why so many people avoid silence. Because silence removes distraction. And without distraction, truth arrives. Sometimes that truth is uncomfortable. It may show you that you have been living for approval instead of purpose. It may show you that you have been chasing attention instead of growth. It may show you that you are surrounded by people who only like the loud version of you, because the quieter version would force them to face themselves. But once you begin listening in silence, your life changes. You become more honest, more intentional, more selective. You stop saying yes when your spirit means no. You stop revealing your plans too early to people who have never built anything themselves. You stop confusing visibility with progress. Silence gives you the space to build in private. And private building is often where real power is created. Think about it. The strongest transformations in life rarely happen in public. Discipline is built in quiet mornings when no one is watching. Emotional healing happens in private moments where truth is finally allowed to speak. Focus is built in rooms where there is no applause, only repetition. Character is built in the silence between temptation and decision. That is why people who learn to love silence often become unstoppable. They are no longer dependent on the crowd for energy. They are no longer addicted to being seen at every stage of progress. They know how to disappear for a while, work in peace, and return with results. And results always speak louder than noise. Silence is also deeply connected to mystery, and mystery has power. People value what they cannot fully read. Not because manipulation is the goal, but because oversharing weakens presence. The person who reveals everything too quickly loses depth. But the person who speaks with care, who does not rush to empty their mind into the room, creates gravity. People lean in. People pay closer attention. People sense that there is something steady beneath the surface. In a world where everyone is broadcasting constantly, restraint becomes magnetic. Silence makes your words stronger because it teaches you not to waste them. When you finally do speak, people listen. Why? Because your voice is no longer cheap. It is not thrown carelessly into every conversation. It arrives with intention, and intention creates impact. There is a major difference between being silent because you are afraid and being silent because you are in control. Fear-based silence comes from insecurity. It hides. It shrinks. It accepts disrespect because it does not believe it deserves better. But power-based silence is different. It is calm, not small. It is aware, not passive. It is patient, not weak. This kind of silence knows when to speak and when to leave. It knows when words will bring clarity and when words will only feed chaos. Learning the difference between those two forms of silence is essential. Because the goal is not to become voiceless. The goal is to become deliberate. The goal is to stop speaking from compulsion and start speaking from purpose. There will be moments when you must speak, when truth requires a voice, when a boundary must be named, when someone needs your honesty. Silence is not about permanent quiet. It is about mastery. It is about no longer letting emotion, pressure, or insecurity decide when your mouth opens. A powerful person can be silent or direct, gentle or firm, quiet or commanding. What matters is that the choice belongs to them. That is true power. It is not limited to one behavior. It is the ability to remain anchored in yourself no matter what the room demands from you. This is why silence often makes you more respected in relationships too. People test emotional strength, sometimes consciously, sometimes not. They push boundaries. They watch reactions. They look for signs of desperation, instability, or neediness. The person who speaks too much out of fear loses value in those moments because they reveal how badly they need reassurance. But the person who can remain composed, who can pause, who can avoid overreacting, often commands more respect. Not because they are playing games, but because they are not ruled by emotional panic. They know how to hold their center. And people trust those who can hold their center. Silence gives you that. It slows your reactions and strengthens your presence. It helps you become the kind of person who does not collapse every time life becomes uncomfortable. Another hidden power of silence is that it helps you protect your plans. Too many people destroy their own momentum by speaking too early. They announce what they are going to do before they have done it. They share their goals with people who clap at the idea, but secretly do not believe in the outcome. They look for motivation through conversation instead of commitment through action. Then, when life becomes difficult, the energy disappears. Silence protects your mission. It allows your plans to grow roots before they are exposed to outside opinions. Not everything needs to be shared. Not every move needs to be explained. Sometimes the strongest strategy is to build quietly until your results introduce you better than your words ever could. The world is full of people who talk big and accomplish little. Silence separates you from that pattern. It teaches you to value substance over performance. It teaches you to move with discipline instead of display. That is why silence is often misunderstood by people who live for attention. They mistake it for weakness because they cannot imagine strength that does not announce itself. But quiet strength is real. In fact, it is often stronger because it is less dependent. It does not need witnesses to exist. It does not need constant validation to continue. It simply works. And over time, this kind of quiet power becomes impossible to ignore. People may overlook silence at first. They may underestimate it. They may assume you have less because you show less. But eventually results change the conversation. Eventually discipline reveals itself. Eventually the calm person who kept working in silence begins to stand taller than all the noisy people who kept demanding attention without building anything real. That is one of life's simplest truths. Noise may win the moment, but silence often wins the long game. So if you feel yourself changing, if you feel less interested in explaining, less interested in reacting, less interested in joining every argument and proving yourself in every room, do not be afraid. That does not mean you are becoming weak or disconnected. It may mean you are growing. It may mean you are finally learning where your energy belongs. It may mean you are becoming more powerful than you used to be. Because power is not always loud. Sometimes power is a pause. Sometimes it is restraint. Sometimes it is walking away. Sometimes it is choosing not to answer. Sometimes it is building while others talk. Sometimes it is protecting your peace so completely that the noise of the world can no longer pull you out of yourself. And once you experience that kind of silence, you begin to understand something important. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is force. Silence is clarity. Silence is self-respect. And when a person learns how to carry that properly, they become harder to shake, harder to deceive, and much harder to defeat. Silence also changes your relationship with pain. Most people try to escape pain through noise. They distract themselves, explain themselves, surround themselves with constant stimulation, and fill every empty moment with something loud enough to stop them from hearing what is happening inside. But silence forces you to sit with yourself, and that is uncomfortable at first. In silence, you meet the parts of yourself you have been avoiding. The fear, the insecurity, the anger, the loneliness, the regrets, the questions you buried under activity. That is why so many people run from silence. Because silence does not flatter you. It reveals you. But that is also why it is powerful. Because once you stop running, once you stay still long enough to hear your own truth without trying to decorate it, you begin to heal in a real way. Not a performance of healing. Not a version meant to look strong from the outside. Real healing. The kind that changes your standards, your boundaries, and the way you carry yourself in the world. Silence teaches you endurance. It teaches you that not every uncomfortable feeling is an emergency. It teaches you that discomfort can be survived without being dramatized. That lesson alone makes you stronger than most people. Because most people are not defeated by pain itself. They are defeated by their inability to sit with it long enough to understand what it is trying to teach them. A silent mind becomes a resilient mind because it stops treating every inner storm as a reason to collapse. It learns to watch, to breathe, to wait, and eventually to rise with more clarity than before. Silence also improves your judgment. When your mind is constantly crowded by other voices, it becomes difficult to know what is true. You start borrowing opinions instead of forming them. You start reacting to pressure instead of responding to reality. You start making choices to avoid criticism instead of making choices that align with your purpose. But in silence, the noise begins to fall away. You begin to think more cleanly. You begin to ask better questions. You become more honest with yourself about what you want, what you tolerate, and what you need to leave behind. This is why silence often makes people wiser. Not automatically, not magically, but because wisdom requires space. It requires reflection. It requires the ability to hold a thought long enough for it to deepen instead of instantly throwing it into conversation for approval. A person who learns to think in silence often becomes far more dangerous than a person who only thinks out loud. Why? Because quiet thought has weight. Quiet thought is not trying to impress. It is trying to understand. And understanding will always outperform performance in the long run. Silence gives you the power to choose better because it helps you see better. It also changes the way you carry disappointment. There will always be people who misunderstand you. People who expect reactions they no longer get. People who feel insulted when they lose access to your emotions. People who become louder the moment you become calmer, because your calm exposes how unstable their power really was. Silence helps you survive those people without becoming like them. It teaches you that disappointment does not require self-betrayal. You do not have to explain yourself into exhaustion every time someone is committed to seeing you incorrectly. You do not have to chase closure from those who enjoyed the confusion they created. You do not have to argue with those who only want your energy, not your truth. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let people keep their misunderstanding and move on with your life. That is not weakness. That is freedom. One of the highest forms of power is the ability to remain at peace while someone else refuses to understand you. Silence helps build that power. It teaches you not to beg for emotional permission to exist as you are. It teaches you that peace is more valuable than being right in the eyes of people who were never looking honestly in the first place. There is another reason silence matters. It makes your presence heavier. A person who cannot stop talking often becomes easy to ignore. Their energy spills everywhere. Their words lose meaning because there are too many of them. But a person who knows how to be quiet develops gravity. When they speak, people feel the shift. When they enter a room, they do not have to dominate it to affect it. Their restraint gives their presence weight. This is why calm people often seem more powerful even before they have said anything important. Their energy is not scattered. It is collected. It is contained. It is directed. And contained energy always feels stronger than chaotic energy. Think about the people who truly leave an impression. They are rarely the loudest. They are rarely the ones trying hardest to be noticed. More often, they are the ones who seem anchored, the ones who do not rush, the ones who do not overshare, the ones who listen more than they speak, and when they finally speak, they say something that cuts through the noise because it comes from clarity rather than insecurity. That kind of presence is built in silence. It is built in self-control. It is built in the refusal to make every room responsible for validating your existence. Silence also teaches patience, and patience is one of the rarest forms of strength. In a world obsessed with speed, silence slows you down enough to stop ruining your own progress through haste. It teaches you to wait before reacting, to wait before trusting, to wait before speaking about plans that are not yet ready, to wait before forcing outcomes that need more time. This does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming strategic. It means understanding that timing matters, and that not every move becomes stronger by being immediate. Some of the best decisions in life come after silence has had time to separate emotion from truth. Patience is not an action. It is disciplined timing. Silence strengthens that discipline. It helps you avoid cheap reactions and choose effective ones instead. That is why people who master silence often seem more composed under pressure. They are not necessarily less emotional. They are simply less enslaved by immediacy. They know how to pause. And a pause can save you from saying what should never be said, revealing what should never be revealed, or ruining what only needed a little more time to become clear. Silence also protects your dignity. There is a kind of self-respect that grows every time you refuse to chase what has clearly chosen distance. Every time you refuse to argue with disrespect. Every time you stop trying to force yourself into rooms that only valued you when you were loud, useful, or easily controlled. Silence becomes dignity when it is chosen instead of begged into existence. It becomes a way of saying, without words, that your spirit is no longer available for cheap handling. This is especially important in a world where so many people are rewarded for emotional theater. Attention has made performance look like depth. Oversharing has made impulsiveness look like honesty. But there is dignity in holding parts of yourself sacred. There is dignity in not turning every wound into content. There is dignity in letting your private growth remain private until it has become real enough to stand on its own. Silence protects that dignity because it keeps you connected to what matters more than reaction. It keeps you aligned with inner standards instead of outer noise. And the older you get, the more valuable that becomes. Eventually, you realize that peace is expensive, and silence is one of the ways you pay for it wisely. The more you understand silence, the less impressed you become by noise. You stop mistaking volume for leadership. You stop mistaking emotional chaos for passion. You stop mistaking public intensity for private strength. You begin to see that many loud people are not powerful at all. They are simply leaking. Leaking insecurity. Leaking fear. Leaking the need to be seen because they have not yet learned how to feel solid when no one is watching. Once you understand that, you stop envying noise. You stop feeling pressure to match it. You stop entering rooms ready to prove that you exist. You already know you do. That is what silence gives you in the deepest sense. It gives you internal confirmation. It gives you a relationship with yourself strong enough that outside recognition becomes optional instead of necessary. And that changes everything. Because once your worth no longer depends on being noticed, your actions become cleaner. Your focus becomes sharper. Your relationships become healthier. Your standards become stronger. You stop living in emotional debt to the world. You stop handing strangers the power to define how you feel about yourself. That is not just peace. That is power. So when life teaches you silence, do not assume it is taking something from you. It may be giving you access to a version of yourself that noise could never reveal. It may be teaching you how to listen, how to endure, how to think clearly, how to protect your energy, how to stop reacting like a wounded person and start moving like a disciplined one. It may be preparing you to become the kind of person whose presence speaks before their mouth ever does. The kind of person who no longer needs to answer every insult, explain every move, or prove every quality. The kind of person who can walk through chaos without carrying it home. And in a world addicted to constant expression, that kind of quiet strength becomes rare. Rare things become valuable. Valuable things become powerful. So learn to love silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally understand that not everything deserves your voice. Not everyone deserves your inner world. Not every moment deserves your reaction. Speak when your words have purpose. Be quiet when your peace has more value than the conversation in front of you. Build in private. Heal in private. Think in private. And when the time comes to act, let your silence stand behind your words like steel. Because real power does not beg to be heard. It does not rush to explain itself. It does not chase every challenge thrown in its direction. Real power stays centered. It waits. It sees. It chooses. And when it finally moves, it moves with such certainty that all the noise around it suddenly sounds small. Silence becomes even more powerful when other people begin to feel its effect on themselves. At first, they may think you are simply quiet. Then they notice something else. They notice that you are not easy to pull into useless drama anymore. They notice that you do not react on schedule. They notice that your calm does not break just because they expected it to. This changes the balance in every room you enter. Most people are used to predictable energy. They are used to people defending themselves too quickly, oversharing too much, speaking from pressure, or exposing their emotions before they understand them. But when you begin moving through life with silence and control, you stop giving people that easy access. And many of them will not know what to do with that. Some will call you cold. Some will say you changed. Some will complain that you are harder to read now. What they often mean is this: they no longer know how to influence you as easily as before. That is one of the hidden reasons silence makes people uncomfortable. It removes the handles they used to use on you. If someone could once provoke you with a sentence and now they cannot, they feel your growth as loss. If someone once had access to your explanations and now they do not, they interpret your boundaries as distance. If someone once relied on your reactions to feel powerful and now they are met with calm, their own weakness rises to the surface. Silence reveals dependence, often not your dependence, but theirs. This is why growth sometimes feels lonely. The moment you stop being easy to disturb, certain people stop feeling close to you. But what they miss is not always your presence. Sometimes what they miss is your availability to chaos. And you must learn the difference. Not everyone who wants access deserves it. Not everyone who feels entitled to your emotional energy has earned it. Silence helps teach you that. It helps you understand that closeness without respect is just another way people consume you. Real connection can survive your quiet. False connection cannot. Silence also changes the way you handle success. Loud people often announce success too early because they want recognition before the work is complete. They show pieces of a structure that has not yet been built strongly enough to carry weight. They seek attention while still depending on it. But silence teaches a different rhythm. It teaches you to become before you announce, to build before you speak, to let your work mature in darkness before exposing it to outside judgment. This is one of the reasons so many truly successful people appear to come out of nowhere. They did not come out of nowhere. They were simply building in silence while everyone else was busy performing motion instead of creating results. If you want real power, learn to become comfortable with being underestimated while you work. Learn to let people misunderstand your current season. Learn to let them assume you are doing less than you are. There is enormous freedom in not correcting every false assumption. Sometimes the greatest advantage is that people think they already understand you when they do not. Silence protects that advantage. It lets you move without constant interruption from people who want updates, but have no intention of helping your progress. It lets your effort stay clean. It lets your attention remain where it belongs, on the work itself. And the work always benefits when ego leaves the room. Silence also deepens discipline because it removes one of the biggest enemies of discipline: emotional leakage. Many people are not lacking goals. They are lacking containment. They lose energy through talking, proving, arguing, venting, defending, comparing, and reacting. By the time they finally sit down to build something meaningful, half their strength has already been spent on noise. Silence closes those leaks. It keeps your energy inside the structure of your own life. It teaches you to direct rather than discharge. This is why a quiet, disciplined person often moves further than a talented but noisy one. Talent matters, but sustained energy matters more. Focused energy matters more. A person who knows how to keep their mind from scattering in every direction becomes far more dangerous than someone with potential who cannot stop reacting to the world. And much of that control begins with silence. Silence in the morning before distraction. Silence after insult instead of instant retaliation. Silence around your plans until they are strong enough to stand without applause. Silence after disappointment so you can actually understand what happened instead of rushing to numb it. These moments build the kind of inner architecture that cannot be faked. Another thing silence gives you is discernment. It becomes easier to see who truly values you and who only values your performance. The moment you become quieter, some people drift away because they never wanted your essence. only your entertainment, your validation, your predictability, your emotional labor, or your easy availability. That realization can hurt, but it also liberates you. Because once you see it, you stop trying to be more convenient in order to keep shallow connections alive. You stop performing closeness for people who have never met the real you in the first place. Silence strips relationships down to their truth. The people who respect your quiet tend to respect your humanity. The people who resent your quiet often resent the fact that they can no longer use you as freely as before. This is why silence is such a powerful teacher. It does not just strengthen you internally. It clarifies your environment. It helps you separate what is solid from what is merely familiar. And familiarity is dangerous when it keeps you loyal to what drains you. Silence helps break that spell. It also gives you access to a higher level of confidence. Not the loud confidence that needs to be seen, but the steady confidence that grows when you keep promises to yourself in private. Every time you remain silent instead of reacting from weakness, you build trust with yourself. Every time you stay focused instead of announcing your goals for temporary validation, you build trust with yourself. Every time you walk away from noise that once would have trapped you, you build trust with yourself. Over time, that private trust becomes the strongest form of confidence there is, because it is not based on appearance. It is based on evidence. You know what you can do because you have watched yourself do difficult things without witnesses. You know you can endure because you have endured without making performance out of pain. You know your worth because you have stopped asking unstable people to tell you what it is. This kind of confidence changes your posture in life. You speak less from desperation. You choose more carefully. You become less available to manipulation because you are no longer starving for approval. Silence helps create that because it returns your attention to the one relationship you can never escape, the relationship you have with yourself. If that relationship is weak, all the external noise in the world will own you. If that relationship is strong, much of the world loses its power over your mind. Silence strengthens that relationship in a way distraction never can. There is also a spiritual side to silence, whether you think about life in spiritual terms or not. Silence puts you in contact with what is deeper than image. It takes away the rush of constant reaction and gives you a chance to feel what actually matters. In silence, values become clearer. Integrity becomes more visible. You begin to feel the difference between what excites your ego and what strengthens your life. Many people never experience that deeply because they stay surrounded by so much noise that every decision gets made inside pressure rather than reflection. But once you know the depth silence can create, you stop fearing it. You begin to need it, not as escape, but as alignment. You begin to protect quiet time the way wise people protect health. Because you understand that silence is not empty space. It is where your mind resets. It is where your spirit stops bending toward every outside force. It is where you become legible to yourself again. And when a person is clear to themselves, they are much harder for the world to confuse. Silence also helps you recover your standards. Noise lowers standards because it makes you reactive. When you are constantly stimulated, constantly talking, constantly proving, you start making decisions just to relieve pressure. You say yes too quickly. You let disrespect slide too long. You stay in the wrong rooms because you have not been quiet long enough to feel how much they cost you. But in silence, standards rise. You begin to notice what disturbs your peace and what strengthens it. You begin to notice who leaves you clear and who leaves you drained. You begin to notice which habits make you feel stronger and which ones make you feel fragmented. Once you notice these things clearly, your tolerance changes. You stop calling exhaustion normal. You stop calling anxiety ambition. You stop calling emotional chaos passion. You stop calling disrespect love. Silence sharpens your ability to tell the truth about what your life is actually doing to you. That truth is not always comfortable, but it is powerful. Because once you see clearly, you can choose clearly. And clear choices build strong lives. Another hidden strength of silence is that it improves your leadership. Many people think leadership is about speaking constantly, commanding attention, filling every moment with direction. But strong leadership often begins with presence, restraint, and accurate reading of reality. A leader who talks too much can miss what the room is actually saying. A leader who reacts too fast can create confusion instead of clarity. A leader who needs attention more than truth will eventually break the structure they are trying to lead. Silence protects against that. It helps you hear what is not being said. It helps you recognize tension before it becomes conflict. It helps you speak only when your words can actually move something useful. Whether you lead a company, a family, a team, or only yourself, this matters. The ability to remain composed and observant under pressure is rare. That rarity creates authority. People trust steadiness. They trust people who do not panic publicly. They trust those who do not make every challenge about ego. Silence builds that steadiness from the inside out. It teaches you to stand in the middle of uncertainty without immediately becoming part of the disorder. And that is leadership in one of its purest forms. Silence also matures your ambition. In the beginning, ambition is often noisy because it is mixed with insecurity. People want to win, but they also want to be seen winning. They want success, but they also want the emotional reward of proving something to the people who doubted them. There is nothing unusual about that. Many strong people begin there. But real growth changes ambition. It makes it quieter. It separates the need to build from the need to broadcast. It teaches you that some victories are weakened by being explained too often. It teaches you that becoming is more important than announcing. Silence helps ambition become cleaner. It removes some of the ego and leaves behind purpose, discipline, and clarity. That is when ambition becomes truly powerful, when it no longer depends on witnesses. When you can work with the same intensity whether anyone claps or not, you have entered a different level of strength. Silence helps get you there because it keeps asking the same question beneath all the noise. Who are you when no one is watching? And the answer to that question shapes everything. If you are disciplined there, you become dangerous. If you are honest there, you become wise. If you are patient there, you become difficult to stop. This is why silence is not just a communication style. It is a training ground. It trains your mind, your energy, your reactions, your standards, your focus, your patience, your judgment, and your sense of self. It strips away dependence on external response and forces you to build from within. Most people do not want that kind of training because it asks too much of them. It asks them to sit with themselves honestly. It asks them to stop confusing motion with progress. It asks them to stop leaking strength through endless reaction. But if you accept that training, your life changes. Your presence changes. The way people feel around you changes. The kind of decisions you make changes. Even your pain changes because it no longer owns you in the same way. It still hurts, but it does not get to speak for you. That is power. Real power. Not domination. Not performance. Not emotional numbness. Power is self-possession. Power is disciplined choice. Power as the ability to remain yourself in a world constantly trying to provoke, confuse, seduce, flatter, interrupt, and redefine you. Silence helps you keep hold of that self. And in the end, that may be one of the greatest advantages a person can ever have. Because once you are no longer easily pulled away from yourself, you stop living by accident. You stop becoming whatever the room requires. You start becoming deliberate. And deliberate people change their lives in ways reactive people can barely imagine. In the end, silence is not about disappearing. It is about becoming so deeply rooted in yourself that the world can no longer pull you in every direction. It is about reaching a point where you do not need to answer every opinion, defend every choice, or explain every step of your journey just to feel secure. Most people spend their lives reacting. Reacting to criticism, reacting to pressure, reacting to rejection, reacting to the expectations of people who do not even understand them. And because they are always reacting, they are never fully creating. They are always adjusting themselves to noise instead of building themselves through truth. Silence breaks that pattern. It teaches you to stop living at the mercy of every outside force. It teaches you to pause before you give your energy away. It teaches you to hold your mind steady when the world around you is restless. And that steadiness becomes power. Real power. The kind of power that does not need to be announced. The kind of power that does not fade when attention disappears. The kind of power that remains with you in private, in struggle, in uncertainty, in the silent moments when no one is clapping and no one is watching. That is where true strength is tested. Not in the moments when you look impressive, but in the moments when you must remain whole without external support. Silence helps you become that kind of person. A person who can endure without collapsing. A person who can think without panic. A person who can feel deeply without becoming ruled by every emotion that rises inside. A person who no longer needs to chase understanding from those who were committed to misunderstanding from the start. A person who knows when to speak, when to walk away, when to build quietly, and when to let results say what words never could. This is why silence changes your life. Because once you stop reacting to everything, you begin choosing. Once you stop leaking energy into noise, you begin directing it into purpose. Once you stop performing your pain, you begin transforming it. Once you stop seeking permission to be who you are, you begin standing inside your own life with more authority than ever before. And people will feel that. Some will respect it. Some will fear it. Some will misunderstand it. Let them. Not everyone is meant to understand a person who has learned how to stay centered. Not everyone will be comfortable around someone who no longer needs noise to feel real. But your life is not meant to be built around the comfort of those people. Your life is meant to be built around truth, discipline, peace, and purpose. Silence protects all four. So do not be afraid of becoming quieter. Do not be afraid if you find yourself less interested in proving, explaining, arguing, and chasing attention. That may not be emptiness. That may be growth. That may be maturity. That may be the beginning of a stronger version of you. One who finally understands that peace is not passivity, restraint is not weakness, and silence is not absence. Silence is presence without performance. Silence is confidence without noise. Silence is self-respect without the need for applause. And once you truly understand that, you begin to move differently. You protect your energy more carefully. You speak more intentionally. You trust yourself more deeply. You stop begging life to slow down enough for you to hear yourself, because you have already learned how to create that silence within. And from that place, your decisions become cleaner, your standards become stronger, your focus becomes sharper, and your spirit becomes harder to disturb. That is the gift of silence. It does not make you empty. It makes you powerful. It does not make you weak. It makes you deliberate. It does not take your voice away. It teaches you how to use it only when it matters. In a world full of noise, distraction, reaction, and performance, the person who masters silence masters something rare. And rare things always carry value. So protect your silence. Grow inside it. Heal inside it. Build inside it. Let it teach you what the loud world never could. And when the time comes to speak, to act, to move, do it from such a deep place of clarity and control that your life itself becomes the loudest proof of your power. Because in the end, silence was never your weakness. It was your greatest strength all along.